I know I'm talking to or preaching to converted today, so I'm not going to go into all the science and all the background. I think we're all very well aware. One of the most incredible statements of 2018 was when the IPCC told us, everyone on this planet, that this emergency is requiring rapid, far-reaching and unprecedented changes in all aspects of society. So that's sort of the starting point that I think we all agree on, why we are here today in a way also. So my name is Mik Aidt, and I see myself first of all as a dad to these three wonderful kids. Professionally, I have worked all my life as a journalist. I'm 58 years old today. I worked in Denmark at the Danish Broadcasting Corporation, and a couple of years while I lived here in Australia, the last 8 years, I've worked with the SBS. And as a journalist and a person who works with words, and as a dad with three kids growing up in this world, I've always felt that I would try to make a difference when it comes to what the time here is saying, that we have one last chance now to redefine how we treat our planet and to make it a safer world for them to grow up in. And my difference in a way was proven just recently, or I felt that I made a difference because I was, we could say, the campaign manager for a local government campaign, where we helped 7 women to run for council. And hallelujah, we actually were successful to get one woman in who is now a climate warrior, one of our own. I have that feeling, finally in the Geelong Council, we now have someone who understands what the climate emergency is all about, because that's the actual reason that she is in council today. She was, in quotation mark, a normal, busy woman teaching at university and so on, who just felt that this is getting too much. Somebody's got to do something. So she stepped up. And I just think it's amazing that we today have this person in council and what this can lead to in the future. That's very exciting. And I should give credit to that this all happened because of that discussion about the climate emergency. And again, that was a campaign that I was part of starting. We were just 4 people here in Australia in 2016 who thought that we need to step up. And as a result of that campaign, started by just 4 people on a Skype conversation, today we have 1,800 councils around the world that have declared a climate emergency. We have the ACT as a state that has done it here in Australia. There are 16 countries that have declared a climate emergency, and even the EU with 28 countries have declared a climate emergency. So something has certainly grown out of that, including that we now have a climate emergency councillor here in Little Geelong. Another thing that I felt very proud about was that the scientists stepped out of their laboratories and actually declared a global climate emergency last year in November. It all began in 2016 when we sat, these 4 people that I mentioned, we sat in a Skype conversation and looked at this particular graph from NASA, which showed that the temperatures were actually getting up and above the 1.5 degrees that everyone had talked about back in 2015 and in Paris, that we shouldn't go there. That would be the beginning of an unsafe territory. Well, we were already there according to this graph, and we were shocked in a way that nobody talked about this. Why is this not headline news in the news? We thought we need to do something about talking about the truth, which is that we are in an emergency. It's not just climate change, it's an emergency. So we started a petition, and we thought from the start, when you look at where to go when you campaign, who should we target? Should it be, the people on the street, or should we go up into the political sphere, and how far up should we go, and so on? We thought we go to the top. We think big here. We want to change the law. We want to declare a climate emergency for Australia and take it from there. We want to have that vision that when our politicians finally get how serious this is, then people will follow. So we wanted to start from the top and make change from top down. So we started the climate emergency declaration as that declaring a climate emergency is something a government can do. And we used quotes from Winston Churchill, and we sort of blew the balloon up very, very big from the start. What happened as a surprise was that sort of in the fringe on the side, because 7 of the 9 council candidates that were running for council in Darebin in Melbourne had actually signed this federal petition. And because Trent McCarthy, who you see on the right there, then had the courage to say, well, that means that if I go into our first meeting in council and suggest that we declare a climate emergency as a council, then there would be 7 out of the 9 who would be with me because they already signed this petition. And so he did, and wrote history in that way. And it turned out that it was smarter and better to run this particular campaign at the city council level, because councillors are maybe a little bit more in touch with individuals, with the citizens, and certainly with the climate striking school kids who often came into council and gave speeches and so on. So there are a lot of plans out there already, and there's so much happening. It's actually very exciting at the moment. There's a lot of initiatives that all point towards that we will get to zero carbon at some stage. The only question is, can we do it as fast as we are required to do it according to the science? And in a way, the problem is also that we have so many plans. There's so many groups that have so many ideas, and we're not everyone on the same page in terms of how are we going to get there. So what I would like to do is not to come with that plan, but I would like to paint for you a sort of a landscape or a picture of where I think, or you could take it this way, the landscape as it looks from my end of the table. Starting with the climate emergency as the first step that we have taken, which is that we have sort of succeeded in that the world, the entire human race now is talking about the concept of that we are in a climate emergency. It's not just climate change anymore. But what are the next steps going to be? And that's, of course, like fortune telling. I don't know, but I can tell you what I have observed, some things that I believe are happening, and where that, in my opinion, could take us to if we would all agree on that that's the direction we're heading. So take this as a brainstorm, and let's have a discussion about it towards the end. So this stairway upwards here was actually, we were all taken by surprise, or there was a big interruption when suddenly coronavirus appeared and everything was locked down. There was a pandemic, and we saw politicians on TV talking about pointing at graphs and talking about flattening the curve. And we had doctors on the television talking about the science and so on. And suddenly it was normalized that we were in a lockdown and that we started caring about our neighbors. And we did all sorts of things that were absolutely unusual. Certainly if you looked in the airports with no passengers, airplanes just parked, that was suddenly becoming the new norm. And I think that's a great inspiration for all of us in the climate emergency or climate campaigning space, which is that, whoa, we hadn't even dared to think that we could stop the airplanes. And here they were all parked. Maybe we need to step up also when it comes to having more radical ideas about where we are going. Maybe we need to look for some real game changers out there. Maybe we have to discuss the UN target of that actually the average emissions per person per year, if we were to have a sustainable planet, should come down to 2 tons. That's 1/10 of what we here in Australia are emitting in average at the moment. Maybe we should talk more specifically about the way that we live our lives and so on, and become more radical in what we do. The first thing we need to do is to start talking about what roles we have, because we don't all have to do the same. There's a lot of education, there's a lot of experimenting. We need to get the media on board. In Denmark, these posters are being produced, which give different sectors in society a 7-point plan of what you need to do. First, you acknowledge that we are in a climate emergency, then point 2, then point 3, and so on. But they're different for each group in society. Media have one role, unions have another role, the royals have a third role, and so on. And we as citizens have a role as well that we need to find out. And that is already a very busy space. People are doing a lot. That's certainly what I feel. There's a lot of focus on, and even more so after the pandemic broke out, on sort of slowing down, on coming back to the basics. Groups and movements like the permaculture movement, the transition movement, and also the wisdom of indigenous life thinking and living. All these things have come up and are in a fantastic growth period at the moment, because people take interest in that this is actually important for us where we're going. So I think what we are seeing at the moment is, and I feel I was very much part of that move when we talk about changing the story in society, that we've changed the language when we talk about the climate. It's no longer climate change, it's climate emergency more and more. It's also coming to a level where a lot of people are beginning to change their behaviors. Sorry about that. I think the connection went at my end.
It did, but we have you back, and please continue. Great.
I'm trying to be fast, so if it doesn't happen again, sorry about that.
All fine, Mik. You're all good.
When did I drop out? I was getting to the point of saying there's a lot happening in the private and the personal space already. And I think we all agree about that. We are all in that. I guess everyone here in the room are busy doing things for themselves. But we also need to talk about, at a greater and larger scale in society, about the values that we put behind this and the size, getting it up in size and scale. What I'm saying here is that as we saw here locally in Geelong, that is inevitably going to lead to a change in the political scene. We now here in Geelong have a person who stepped up, being just a normal person out there working, stepping into politics to put climate first in every decision, making sure that council has this at the front of their heads all the time. That is a huge change, and that's going to go up in the system as the young people come into politics, etc., etc. And it's also inevitable that within the next 5 to 10 years, we'll begin to see price on carbon, bans of petrol cars, a proper stop on subsidies to anything that is ruining our planet. This is all in the pipeline. It's only a question of how fast it will come, but we can begin to see it also happening around the planet at the moment. So what I'm proposing is that if we were more clear about that all this is happening, and if we could agree so far, then what is also going to be happening is that the climate will continue to break down for years and decades to come. That's what the scientists are telling us. We're going to see more and more droughts and many other things. It's not something we can fix in a minute or in a year. And there will increasingly be the sense that, well, we need, just as we did with the pandemic, to flatten the curve, we made a lockdown, certainly here in Melbourne. And similarly with the climate, I think mentally we'll be more and more prepared to make a lockdown for the climate because of all the calamities. And the good side of that story, and this is what I think is important to focus on, is that as we also saw with the pandemic, which is a terrible thing, and people have died from the coronavirus, but it's also for many people been a bit of a relief. We're meeting now in Zoom instead of traveling somewhere. And there's a lot of behavioral changes that have come with the coronavirus, where the same thing is going to happen with this climate lockdown in a way that's on its way. So that's why I suggest to use another word than this negative lockdown. I'm calling it a hiatus, because there's a lot of good things that could happen just as well. There's a lot of things that have to do with our health, with our mental health, with feeling that we live lives that are meaningful and purposeful and so on. And even with our economy that gets more resilient locally, and many, many other things we could talk about. So when we do something that's good for the planet, we're also doing things that are good for ourselves. And we need to focus on that when we're selling this story. I know we are early, we're like the first responders, but when we sell the story, it's not only about protesting and about saying, oh, we have to lock down society for the climate. No, there is a lot of good stories that we can tell. And we could spend, and I think this conference is in itself spending the next 3 days talking about all the good things that are going to come along once we begin to take action. So I'll just skip that very quickly. This is something I was talking with a friend about that you see here, just draft notes, but you can see the words are actually really positive words about how we can change, when we change ourselves to do good for the planet. There's a lot of good things that follow from that at a personal level. With our self-confidence, with trust, with feeling that we matter on this planet. I want to round off with a little story from the Second World War of what happened when Hitler started bombing London, which was, you know, he did that in order to scare people, in order to for the British people to surrender, basically. But the historians are telling us that what happened when people then came together down in the train tunnel, where they were taking refuge, they were in a way in a hiatus from normal life up there in their houses and streets. They came down because of the bombs threatening their lives. But in many ways, what happened there was that people came out of the tunnels again feeling more determined than ever, that they were going to stay on this course that they had already started, and they were going to win the war. And what I think is that in many ways, we are already in a tunnel. In one way or the other. Even Zoom here, we've played with the idea that Zoom is our modern day tunnel, because a lot of these things that I talk about in the hiatus that are going to happen are already happening. They're just scattered. We don't see them as one movement at the moment, but there are people who are on birth strike. There are kids that are on school strike. There's people who have said, I'm not going to fly for a year, or I'm not going to fly ever. And there are people even on hunger strike for the climate and so on. So all these ideas about that we need to push that big pause button are already in our society. They just haven't been put together in a kind of hiatus thinking. In the religious and the spiritual world, there's a long tradition of that it's a good thing to step out of your normal daily day and take a month, take a break, step out, make a time out, go out in the desert and come back a month later, and you will feel enriched. You will feel strengthened and more determined than ever. So I think we can draw on that experience. And I actually think that when historians one day will look back at what's happened and how we made it, how we made that radical change that was needed, they won't be talking about the Paris Agreement or what happened before then, because these, as we have seen, them were failures. The politicians could not solve this problem. But what happened when one man, Trent McCarthy, stood up and declared a climate emergency, or asked his counselors whether they were prepared to declare a climate emergency, that actually led somewhere that is changing the world as we speak at the ground level. And when Coldplay, one of the world's most important rock bands, back in November last year, said, we are not going to go on tour any longer until we found a way where we can do it without harming the planet. That was a spectacular moment. Nobody saw it, but the historians will see it. They will see that here was a radical change. This is very radical for a big band to say, we're sorry, fans, we're not coming on tour until one day when we can fly or drive in an electric way that doesn't harm the planet. That is the kind of leadership that we need to see, and we need to speak that up. And that's what we all can do. And I think that's the inspiration I want to bring to the table, is that, you know, a climate emergency, yes, it is a big problem. It's probably the biggest problem anyone has ever faced. But it's also a chance for each of us to say, well, we can do our best, which was the slogan of Duke Ellington, an American jazz musician. A problem is a chance for you to do your best. So my suggestion is that we need to be bolder. We need to think bigger in terms of getting to that hiatus. And we need to be more together around the language about that. That's what I propose and would like to discuss with you. And I know Andrew has something about thinking bigger coming up later. Think what just this one person's move has led to, if you followed what the climate emergency movement has led to so far, and where we could take it to, just these people in this room, if we had that sort of thinking that it matters. Few people can do a lot. What I try to do at a personal level is I keep making interviews about this topic. So Stairway to Hiatus has for me become like a logo that I put on these interviews that I do that have this sort of content as what I've showed you in the last 20 minutes. And you can follow that if you go to my blog, which is climatesafety.info. You'll find a lot more interviews where I'm talking and having conversations with people about this. Thank you.